On a busy city street, an elderly black woman is suddenly stopped by a police officer. He's convinced she's a suspect, and in front of a growing crowd, he grabs her without warning. But what happens next will leave everyone speechless, because this woman is not who she appears to be, and the shocking truth she reveals will change everything. Imagine this: the heart of downtown on a sweltering afternoon. The sun beats down on concrete sidewalks, shimmering heat waves rising from the asphalt. Cars honk impatiently at the jammed traffic light. Street vendors shout out their prices, selling bottled water and hot dogs. Tourists shuffle with cameras, snapping photos of tall buildings. Local workers hurry past, their faces tired after long hours in the office. It's the ordinary chaos of city life, a place where 1,000 different stories unfold at once. Among the crowd, a woman stands out, not because she is loud or flashy, but because of her quiet presence. She is elderly, perhaps in her late 60s, her back slightly bent with age, but her step steady. She wears a simple yellow blouse, neatly tucked, and holds a small handbag that swings gently at her side. To most passers-by, she looks like someone's grandmother making her way home after a day of errands. She moves with patience, pausing briefly to let a group of teenagers rush ahead of her, then stepping carefully into the crosswalk as the signal changes. No one could guess that in just moments, this calm scene would explode into something unforgettable. From the corner of the street, a police officer watches. His eyes lock onto her. His brow furrows. To him, she looks familiar, or at least he convinces himself that she does. He mutters into his radio, claiming she resembles a suspect described in a call about a robbery earlier that day. The description was vague: black woman, medium height, carrying a bag. Nothing specific, nothing unique. But instead of pausing to think, instead of gathering details, the officer acts on instinct. His jaw tightens. He steps into the crosswalk, moving fast. His boots hit the pavement hard, his expression stern, his posture brimming with authority. Pedestrians notice the shift immediately. The sight of an officer charging across the street always draws attention. Conversations fade. A mother pulls her child a little closer. A man holding a coffee stops mid-sip. The city's background noise suddenly feels muted, as if the street itself senses that something is about to erupt. The officer raises his voice before he even reaches her. "Ma'am, stop right there." His tone is sharp, commanding, the kind that demands obedience. The elderly woman freezes for a split second, startled. She turns her head slowly, eyes wide but calm. "Excuse me, officer," she asks, her voice carrying the politeness of someone raised in a different time, a softer time. But the officer doesn't slow down. He doesn't explain. "You fit the description of a suspect," he barks. "Put your hands where I can see them." The crowd reacts instantly. A group of teenagers whisper to each other, one of them pulling out a phone to record. A delivery driver leans against his truck, shaking his head. A street vendor mutters under his breath, "Here we go again." The woman lifts her hand gently, palm open, signaling that she means no harm. "Officer, I think there's a misunderstanding," she begins. But she doesn't get to finish her sentence. With a sudden, forceful motion, the officer grabs her arm. His grip is rough, unyielding, as if he's dealing with a hardened criminal rather than an elderly woman. Her handbag slips slightly from her shoulder as she stumbles at the unexpected pull. Gasps ripple through the crowd. For a moment, time feels suspended. The people watching know this isn't just an ordinary stop. They can sense the imbalance, the towering officer versus the frail-looking woman. They can see the fear flicker across her face, quickly replaced by something else: composure. She isn't panicking. She isn't screaming. She is steady, collected, almost as if she has been in situations like this before. Still, the officer doesn't notice. He's too focused on control, on authority, on proving he has the upper hand. He twists her arm slightly, muttering under his breath about resisting orders. The woman's eyes narrow just a fraction. She takes a breath, measured and calm. Around them, phones are everywhere now. A young woman in business attire whispers to her friend, "Is he seriously doing this to an old lady?" Another bystander, an older man, shouts, "Hey, She didn't do anything, but the officer blocks out the voices. To him, it's just noise. The woman, though, feels the weight of all those eyes on her. She knows the world is watching, not just the people on the street, but eventually anyone who sees the videos spreading across social media. She knows every move she makes matters. "Officer," she says again, this time with more firmness in her tone, "I believe you are making a mistake." But her words do nothing. His grip tightens. He tries to shove her gently but firmly toward the patrol car parked at the curb. The crowd's murmurs grow louder. Tension thick in the air. Some people inch closer, unsure if they should intervene, while others shake their heads, convinced this confrontation will end badly. And here's the twist that no one on that street knows yet. This woman is not helpless. She is not a random grandmother heading home with groceries. Beneath that calm expression, beneath the polite voice, beneath the ordinary clothes, lies someone with training, with authority, and with a story that will soon shock not just this officer, but everyone watching. For now, though, the moment is suspended, the officer gripping tighter, the elderly woman steadying herself, the crowd holding its breath. What looks like a one-sided clash is about to turn into something no one expected. The street is silent except for the sound of traffic and the officer's heavy breathing. The crowd senses it. Something bigger than a routine stop is unfolding. And within seconds, this ordinary afternoon will become the story people can't stop talking about. The officer's voice grows sharper, his words cutting through the heavy silence. "You're coming with me," he declares, each syllable dripping with authority. His grip on the woman's arm tightens, his jaw clenched in frustration. To him, this is routine. Force compliance, establish control, make the arrest. That's how it's always been. The elderly woman looks up at him, her eyes steady and calm. She doesn't pull away. She doesn't flinch. She simply meets his glare with a quiet strength, as if she's seen this kind of rage before. Her lips part, and in a firm but composed voice, she says, "Officer, I think you're making a mistake." The words hang in the air. For a split second, there's a chance for the officer to stop, to reassess, to listen. But instead, his pride takes over. The stares of the crowd fuel his determination. He can feel their judgment, their phones recording, and in his mind, the only way forward is to prove his dominance. Without a second thought, he shoves her forward toward his patrol car. The sudden push jolts her body, but what happens next changes everything. In one fluid motion, faster than anyone could imagine, the woman twists her arm free. Her movements are sharp, precise, executed with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's doing. The officer's hand slips away, his fingers clenching at nothing but air. The crowd gasps. The sound is collective, like the intake of breath before a storm. A man holding his phone lowers it slightly, blinking in disbelief. A teenager whispers, "Did you see that?" While another shouts, "No way." She's too fast for him. The woman doesn't run. She doesn't scream. Instead, she squares her stance, her feet firmly planted on the concrete. Her posture is striking, not that of a helpless elder, but of a seasoned fighter. Her back straightens, her shoulders roll back, her eyes narrow with focus. She no longer looks like a grandmother caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She looks like someone trained, someone prepared. The officer's face reddens with embarrassment. The murmurs of the crowd gnaw at him, fueling his frustration. How could this frail-looking woman slip out of his grasp so easily? Anger boils inside him, and with a grunt, he lunges forward again, determined to pin her down and reassert his control. But this time, the outcome is even more shocking. As he swings his arm to grab her, she doesn't retreat, she advances. With flawless precision, she redirects his motion, using his momentum against him. Her hand meets his wrist at just the right angle, and with a swift movement, she deflects his entire attack. The officer stumbles, thrown off balance, his boots scraping against the pavement as he staggers a step back. The crowd erupts in disbelief. "What was that?" a woman shouts. "She flipped his move like it was nothing," another exclaims. "No way an old lady can fight like that," someone else mutters, their phone still recording. The officer steadies himself, breathing heavily, his pride crushed beneath the weight of public humiliation. His opponent is not a frightened civilian cowering before authority. She's something else entirely. And the woman? She stands calm, breathing evenly, her expression unreadable. There's no anger in her eyes, no panic, only control. Her hands are steady, her stance unshaken. To the untrained eye, it looks almost unreal. To those who understand combat, it's clear. Every move she makes is intentional, calculated, practiced. The crowd is no longer just watching. They're invested. They're whispering, speculating, questioning everything they thought they knew about the scene unfolding in front of them. Wait, how does she know how to fight like that? A man in a baseball cap asks aloud, his voice carrying over the silence. That's not self-defense training. That's something else, replies another, eyes wide. Who is she? The frail grandmother image has vanished. In its place stands a warrior cloaked in disguise. Her yellow blouse flutters slightly in the breeze, her long hair falling over her shoulders, but her presence radiates strength. She doesn't look like prey anymore. She looks like the hunter. The officer wipes the sweat from his brow, his breathing ragged. His training, his badge, his authority, all feel small in the face of this woman's unshakable composure. And still, he charges again, refusing to admit defeat. The woman's eyes flick briefly to the crowd, then back to him, her lips pressed together in quiet determination. She knows what's coming, and she knows she can handle it. Every person watching feels it too. This is no ordinary encounter. Something extraordinary is unfolding on this street, and the world is about to learn that this woman is far from helpless. She is fearless. The officer's chest heaves with frustration. His face glistens with sweat under the hot afternoon sun. Every breath is shallow, his anger mixing with humiliation. This was supposed to be simple, an easy stop, a quick arrest, something he could write up and move on from. Instead, this woman had deflected him, embarrassed him, and now, in front of a growing crowd, his authority was slipping through his fingers. Desperate to regain control, he reaches for his radio. His fingers press the button, his voice sharp. Dispatch, I need backup. But before the words can leave his mouth, something unexpected happens. The elderly woman, still calm, still collected, slowly reaches into her handbag. The crowd tenses, whispers ripple through the air. Every eye is locked on her. Every camera zooms in closer. Some brace themselves, unsure of what she might pull out. And then, with deliberate grace, she reveals it. Not a weapon, not an excuse, a badge. The sunlight catches the polished metal, making it gleam for all to see. Gasps ripple through the crowd, louder than ever before. Dozens of phones tilt forward to capture the moment. Even the officer, mid-sentence, freezes in place. It's not just any badge. It's an FBI badge. Time seems to stop. The noise of the street fades into silence. The crowd collectively inhales, unable to believe what they're seeing. The officer's eyes widen in shock. His voice cracks as he stammers. "You're FBI?" The woman straightens her posture, her presence suddenly commanding the entire block. Her voice, steady and unshakable, carries across the silence. Special Agent Margaret Lewis, Federal Bureau of Investigation. "And you, officer," she says, her tone sharp as steel, "have just made a very big mistake." The words cut deeper than any physical strike. The weight of her identity crashes down on the officer like a tidal wave. His jaw drops, his aggression evaporating into pure disbelief. His stance weakens, his hands tremble slightly. Just seconds ago, he was the one in power. Now, he realizes he hasn't just harassed an innocent woman. He has assaulted a federal agent. The crowd erupts into murmurs. "She's FBI? No way. I didn't see that coming. Oh, he's in big trouble now." Phones keep recording, their lenses locked on the unfolding drama. Every angle captures a moment. The stunned officer, the confident agent, the astonished onlookers. This isn't just a confrontation anymore. It's a historic scene, one that people will replay again and again across social media. The officer swallows hard, his atoms apple bobbing. His voice shakes as he tries to find words. I didn't know. I didn't realize." Agent Lewis doesn't flinch. She takes one deliberate step closer, her gaze piercing straight through him. "That's the problem," she says firmly. "You didn't realize because you didn't take the time. You didn't ask questions. You didn't verify. You saw what you wanted to see, and you acted without thought." The officer's face burns red. Every word she speaks feels like a spotlight shining on his mistake. The murmurs of the crowd grow louder, feeding his humiliation. He wants to shrink into the pavement, to disappear, but there's no escape. Not here. Not now. For the first time since the encounter began, the officer lowers his head. His once dominant stance has crumbled into nervous hesitation. His voice is barely audible. I'm sorry." But Agent Lewis doesn't let up. Her authority is undeniable, her presence overwhelming. "Sorry doesn't undo what you did," she replies firmly. "You put your hands on me. You tried to force me into your car. You humiliated me in front of these people. And you did it without evidence, without respect, without reason." The crowd nods, some even cheering quietly at her words. She's not just speaking for herself. She's speaking for everyone who has ever been judged unfairly, dismissed, or mistreated. The officer shifts uncomfortably, his hands fidgeting by his belt. He knows she's right. Deep down, he knows his actions weren't based on facts, but on assumptions. And now, the truth has been laid bare for everyone to see. Agent Lewis lifts her badge higher, ensuring every camera records it clearly. "This," she says, her tone unwavering, "is who I am, a federal agent sworn to protect justice. And today, officer, you fail to recognize justice standing right in front of you." The impact of her words is electric. The crowd breaks into murmurs again, some clapping, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The officer, once so confident, now stands frozen, stripped of authority. This moment, this reveal, has changed everything. The officer's career flashes before his eyes. Reports, reviews, complaints, consequences. He knows this won't be brushed aside. Not when there are dozens of witnesses. Not when videos are already uploading to the internet. Not when he laid his hands on a woman who not only outranks him, but embodies the very justice he swore to uphold. And so, the tables have turned completely. The woman he thought was helpless now stands as the most powerful person on the street. The officer who believed he held control now finds himself at the mercy of her judgment. And the crowd? They will never forget the moment an ordinary, elderly woman revealed herself to be Special Agent Margaret Lewis of the FBI. The street is silent, but the silence isn't empty. It's heavy. Heavy with judgment. Heavy with truth. Heavy with the realization that something far bigger than a routine stop has just taken place. Agent Margaret Lewis doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't gloat, doesn't wave her authority around like a weapon. Instead, she does something far more powerful. She straightens her blouse, adjusts her handbag, and turns her gaze directly on the officer. Her eyes are calm but piercing, the kind of look that cuts through defenses and goes straight to the heart. When she speaks, her voice is measured, not angry, but steady, filled with the authority of someone who has nothing to prove but everything to teach. "This," she begins, "is why listening matters. This is why respect matters. You saw me, and you made a decision without evidence, without care. That is not policing. That is prejudice." Her words strike like a gavel hitting the bench in a courtroom. The officer visibly flinches, as if each word weighs on him heavier than the last. His face flushes red. His eyes drop to the pavement, unable to meet her stare. The crowd murmurs in agreement. "She's right," someone whispers. "This is what needs to be said." Another adds. Phones remain raised, recording every syllable. This moment isn't just for those standing on the street. It's for everyone who will replay it later millions of times, across screens and platforms. The officer swallows hard, his atoms apple-bobbing nervously. The authority he once carried has dissolved into embarrassment. The weight of the crowd's judgment presses on his shoulders like an iron chain. He knows, deep down, this moment will follow him for the rest of his life. But Agent Lewis doesn't stop there. She takes another step forward, her presence commanding the street. "If you had taken just one moment to ask for my ID," she continues, her tone unwavering, you would have discovered who I was. Instead, you chose aggression. You chose force. That choice has consequences. The officer shifts uncomfortably, his boots scraping the pavement. His arrogance is gone, stripped away completely. What remains is a man standing exposed before the truth. A teenager in the crowd mutters, "Man, she's teaching him right here on the street." Another replies, "Good. He needs to hear it." The officer finally manages to speak, his voice small, trembling. I didn't mean..." But Agent Lewis cuts him off, not with anger, but with clarity. Intentions don't erase actions. You think not meaning harm makes it okay? It doesn't, because harm was done. To me, to the trust between us, to the very badge you wear. Her words echo in the air, louder than any siren. The officer's head sinks lower. The crowd nods, some clapping quietly, others murmuring their support. Margaret Lewis continues, her voice carrying the weight of experience and justice. Every officer has power. Power to protect. Power to harm. Power to build trust or destroy it. And today, you chose wrong. You forgot your duty. You forgot your oath. You forgot that respect must come before authority. The officer feels the sting of her words deep in his chest. He had entered this encounter certain of his authority, convinced of his control. Now, all of that lies shattered at his feet. He's left with only regret. And Agent Lewis? She stands tall, not as a victim, not even just as an agent, but as a teacher, a messenger, someone delivering a lesson the entire city needs to hear. The crowd grows bolder. One man shouts, "Tell him, ma'am." Another adds, "This is the kind of accountability we need." The officer glances at the crowd, shame burning his cheeks. He realizes this isn't just between him and Agent Lewis anymore. This has become public. Witnessed, recorded. The consequences will spread far beyond this block. Agent Lewis softens her voice slightly, though the steel in her tone remains. You wear that uniform for a reason. People look at you and expect safety, protection, fairness. But if you treat people with bias, with assumptions, then you fail not just them, you fail the law itself. The words hang in the air like scripture. A hush falls over the crowd again, everyone leaning in to hear. The officer, his shoulders slumped, whispers, I see that now." But Margaret Lewis shakes her head gently. Seeing it now isn't enough. It must change. Because today, your actions could have ended differently. If I were not who I am, if I did not have the training I do, this could have been tragic, and you would have been responsible. The silence that follows is chilling. The officer's lips part, but no words come. He knows she's right. The truth is undeniable. For the first time in his career, he doesn't feel like the man in control. He feels small, exposed, human. The crowd senses a shift too. They aren't just watching a confrontation anymore. They're watching a lesson unfold. One that speaks to something much larger than this single encounter. Respect, justice, the difference between using power responsibly and abusing it. And Agent Lewis, standing steady under the weight of dozens of recording phones and countless watching eyes, has made sure that lesson will not be forgotten. The sound of sirens pierces the thick tension, growing louder as squad cars approach from both ends of the block. Blue and red lights reflect off shop windows, bouncing across the stunned faces of the crowd. Backup has arrived. Several officers step out quickly, hands resting near their holsters, ready for action. But the sight that greets them isn't what they expected. Instead of their fellow officers standing firm with a suspect in custody, they see him red-faced, defeated, and utterly silent. And standing before him, calm and commanding, is an elderly woman in a yellow blouse holding an FBI badge high for everyone to see. The newcomers freeze. Their eyes widen. In an instant, they understand the gravity of the situation. This isn't routine arrest gone wrong. This is a career-ending mistake unfolding in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses and rolling cameras. The crowd reacts with a surge of energy. Cheers ripple through bystanders, some clapping, others shouting words of support. "That's right," one man yells. "Stand your ground, ma'am." Another adds, "She showed him." Phones rise even higher. recording every second of the unfolding conclusion. By now, the story is no longer confined to the street corner. It's destined to spread across the internet, igniting conversations far and wide. Agent Margaret Lewis takes a breath and lowers her badge, but her presence doesn't shrink. If anything, she seems larger than life, a pillar of composure and strength standing tall against humiliation, prejudice, and injustice. She doesn't just address the officer anymore. She addresses everyone within earshot. Her voice rings clear and strong. Respect is not optional. Justice is not selective. Never judge a book by its cover, because you might just find out that the person you underestimated could change everything. The words echo through the street, bouncing off the glass storefronts, carried by the hush of the crowd. For a moment, even the city itself seems to pause. Cars idling at green lights, vendors standing still, pedestrians frozen mid-step. Every soul on that block feels the weight of her message. The officer who grabbed her moments before lowers his head, his jaw tight, his pride shattered. He knows she isn't just speaking to the crowd. She's speaking to him. And he knows her words will follow him for the rest of his life, burned into his memory as a constant reminder of his failure. One of the backup officers, still stunned, mutters under his breath, "She's right." Another nudges him, whispering, "Man, we just walked into history." Agent Lewis doesn't linger on the officer's shame. She doesn't rub salt in the wound. Instead, she delivers something much more profound, a lesson for all to carry. She looks out the crowd, her gaze sweeping across strangers who now hang on her every word. "This moment," she continues, "is not just about me. It's about every person who's been judged unfairly. Every person dismissed because of how they look, how they walk, how they speak, or where they come from. Respect cannot depend on appearances. Justice cannot depend on assumptions. Because when it does, justice fails us all." The crowd erupts in applause, louder this time, their cheers echoing like thunder. A woman in the back wipes a tear from her eye. A man holding his phone says aloud, "She's preaching truth right here in the middle of the street." The officer shifts uncomfortably, staring at the pavement, wishing he could disappear. For him, this isn't just a mistake. It's a public unraveling. But for the crowd, it's something else entirely. It's a spark, a message, a call to remember that real strength doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Agent Lewis adjusts her handbag, straightens her posture, and takes a step toward the edge of the crowd. Every eye follows her. Her presence is magnetic, her dignity unshaken. The once chaotic street is transformed into something sacred, a space where truth was revealed, where justice was spoken, where respect was demanded. And then, as if to mark the final chapter of this confrontation, the applause swells. It grows louder and louder until it drowns out the hum of idling engines and the chatter of radios. The crowd is no longer divided into bystanders. They are united, standing in awe of a woman who reminded them all of something timeless. She's not just an FBI agent. She's not just an elderly woman who surprised an arrogant officer. She's a symbol, a living reminder that strength comes in many forms, that justice is not bound by appearances, and that truth will always reveal itself, even in the most unexpected ways. The officer watches silently, his heart pounding, knowing this chapter of his life is over. He will never forget her words. He will never forget the lesson. And as Special Agent Margaret Lewis walks away, head held high, the cheers of the crowd chase after her like a victory march. She doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. Her message has already been delivered, etched into the memory of everyone who witnessed it, captured forever in the recordings that will spread like wildfire. On that street, in that moment, an elderly black woman became more than just herself. She became a voice of truth, and the world listened.